Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Modern Business Requirements webinar series. My name is Stephanie, and I will be kicking us off here today. In today's episode, we're going to be covering the differences between IT and cybersecurity standards, and we're really excited to bring you a few of our experts to walk you through it all. But before we hop in, there's just a couple housekeeping items that I'd like to review. First off, all attendees will be on mute, but if you're having audio or video issues, please let us know using the Ask Questions section on your screen. You can use that same section to ask our host questions about today's topic, and we will facilitate a Q&A at the end of their conversation today to address any of your questions. You'll also find some related content on the console. So if you want to learn more about managed IT or cybersecurity, and you can even register for our webinar coming up in December, which will take a look ahead at 2023 business trends. And lastly, this session is being recorded. So anyone who signed up for today's webinar will receive a link to view on demand at any time. So if you miss anything, don't worry, you can always rewatch whenever you have time. Okay, with that, I'm going to introduce our host today. So first up, we have Ray Santoro. He is the Director of MIT Business Development and Partner here at Impact. Second up, we have Jeremiah School, MIT District Manager and Partner, also at Impact. And lastly, we have our guest host, Jeff Leader, who is the CEO of Dot Security, who is Impact's cybersecurity partner. So with that, Ray, I'm going to pass it over to you to get the conversation started.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Stephanie. Appreciate the introductions. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Jeremiah, Jeff, really looking forward to the conversation today. I'm excited about this. This is an important topic. I spend a lot of time out in the field in front of clients in the conversation about what is cybersecurity, what's the difference from what I've been doing for years. It's a common conversation, and we're spending a lot of time educating clients on what the differences are and why the needs have been changing over the last few years and why they're going to continue to change moving forward. So I guess the first question I'll pose to get the conversation started is, at its most basic level, what's the difference between your standard operational IT and cybersecurity?
Well, I'll jump in. I think it starts with the simple fact that what cybersecurity means to different individuals in different organizations can differ widely. And the way that we look at it underneath Impact is we see basic cybersecurity and advanced cybersecurity being things that are needed across an organization. But when we look at advanced cybersecurity, those are typically aligning to the detect, respond, and recover sides of the traditional frameworks that we see most organizations following. And the advanced items would be things like threat hunting, vulnerability management, threat response, and so forth. So Ray, to your question, the basics would be having a firewall, having that properly hardened, having your network configured correctly, doing security testing and training, multi-factor authentication, all of those things. Again, some of which people would argue are cybersecurity items, but we really see that as being some things that are quite basic and things that should be really matured within the IT operations side of a business. Most organizations have the same people doing cybersecurity, advanced cybersecurity related things, or attempting to, as the same people that are doing their IT, and the people, the process, and the technology associated with delivering those is much different. Jeff, can you share why maybe not having the same team doing the IT things versus the cybersecurity things, or the advanced cybersecurity things, is maybe not a good idea?
Sure. I mean, it really does come down to resource constraints and time and attention and expertise. The people who stand up and maintain your IT infrastructure, they know how to do that. They know how to do it well, at least hopefully. Security should always be a concern and a consideration and an aspect of that. And that's IT security in a nutshell, right? I stand up, I provision, I implement the IT infrastructure and assets to sustain a business. Cybersecurity is something that sits on top of that and provides advanced detection and response capabilities. It provides informed strategy, and it really considers things from the perspective of cyber attack is a thing that's going to occur. How do we address that as an organization? How do we advise the business in the right direction so that when an incident does occur, they can respond effectively? And so, at its core, IT security, IT capability, that is an integral component of every organization. But implementing cybersecurity detection and response and strategy services on top of that is also equally important.
Thank you, gentlemen. It sounds like a solid operational IT, the foundation needs to be there in order to implement that cybersecurity, and they're very interdependent of one another. It's not one or the other. So with that being said, it sounds like a lot more needs to be done for growing businesses and businesses move forward in the world. Who needs advanced cybersecurity? Why can't they just get away with that operational IT, that solid foundation?
Well, I'll jump in.
Yeah,
I'll jump in and just simply say that some organizations are required to have cybersecurity products and services. And we're seeing a lot more of that from a federal perspective, and insurance companies are driving a lot of good posture as well. I don't think we're at the point of where obviously all organizations are required to, but I definitely think that we will see in the near future to where not having these cybersecurity services are going to truly prohibit an organization from being able to do meaningful work, especially with the amount of dependency on technology within organizations and the need to keep those systems alive so that businesses can continue to proceed.
I think that's an excellent point. I like that, because the who needs security, I often hear everyone does. And I don't think it's everyone, but I do think it's a lot of businesses. I think it's every business. To touch on a point that you just made, any business that cares about the availability of their critical line of business applications or the uptime of their systems. Businesses these days rely on technology in order to operate. And when there's a failure of a critical component, whatever it might be, whether it's a line of business application, a server, a piece of network equipment, it's costly downtime. A security breach may not only be downtime and the cost associated with that downtime and the loss of productivity. A breach could mean the intellectual property being compromised. It could mean valuable client data being compromised. It could be any number of things. Something that's often not looked at or thought about is a potential reputational damage post-breach. If a business is all over the news that they've been breached, there's been a compromise. There's a lot that goes into it, and answering who needs it. It all really depends on the business needs.
Jeff, on the dot side, are you seeing organizations of a specific type or a specific size that are targeted, or is it more general than that?
Perhaps I'm a little bit biased, but from where I sit, every organization needs cybersecurity capabilities. The reality of the situation is that any data can be monetized by an attacker, or any access can be sold by an attacker. So we've certainly run up against scenarios where we need to provide a little bit more insight and education to business owners and decision makers in relation to cyber risk. Attackers aren't ignoring you because you don't have defenses or you don't have value. Your perceived value is very different than your value as perceived by an attacker. You have to assume that if an attacker can easily get in and steal data and monetize it, that is essentially going to lead to inevitable incidents and risk for your organization. The sooner you recognize that you are under attack and you are a target, the sooner it makes sense for you to implement cybersecurity services to defend against that.
Makes sense. Ray, I got a question for you. How can a business owner know or understand or have a feeling of confidence in knowing that they're doing the right thing for their organization when it comes to cybersecurity?
There's a lot of different things that they could be doing, but I guess the first starting point, it's a question that gets posed a lot in meetings that we have, but some of the things that I respond to that question with our questions is to an executive or an executive team. How often are they meeting as a team and talking about the organization's security posture? Is there a specific person within the organization that is responsible for cybersecurity within the organization? Is there somebody responsible for driving a security culture in the organization? It needs to be, someone needs to take ownership of it, and it needs to be believed in by the executive team and pushed from the top down. Other questions I ask: when was the last time you sat down with a leadership group and discussed security, discussed investing in security, just investing in solutions, investing in people? It needs to be a topic that's top of mind and often discussed. That's really where it starts. It's not just about software. It's not just subscribing to some services. It's really understanding the need, driving the need. Many organizations are custodians of sensitive information, whether you're in financial services, whether they're in healthcare or manufacturing. There's sensitive data that's being accessed by employees. And do employees look at that data from a security mindset when they're touching it?
One of my favorites is, if you were to ask an executive on a scale of 1 to 5 how much support they give their security leaders, what their response is, and then go to the security leaders and ask them the same question and see if there's actual alignment there, right? I think we often see that there's a misunderstanding between the two on that.
I love that. So we've talked about a lot of different components here. We talked about operational IT, that solid foundation. We talked about detection and response. So, Jeff, I guess I'll ask you this question specifically, but Jeremiah, obviously I'm looking for some of your feedback too. But do the traditional IT security measures like a firewall and network segmentation and antivirus that Jeremiah mentioned earlier, do these just not work anymore?
So the simplest answer is no, absolutely not. In fact, those things are still very much essential today. You can't effectively detect and respond to threats against assets that are totally unprotected. So you still want to make sure that you're implementing essential IT security. You still want firewalls, not only at your perimeter, but also on the endpoints, since many of the endpoints don't exist within some perimeter anymore. A lot of them are out roaming about in hybrid or remote work scenarios. But you also want to make sure that you're implementing essential IT security functions like multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, next-gen antivirus, and that type of thing. All of these means to protect your assets are gates to prevent attackers from getting access to them as easily. That having been said, those traditional IT security measures are just not adequate in and of themselves. Attackers can see a firewall from a million miles away. Attackers can spot an antivirus solution on an endpoint and evade or bypass it and still manage to compromise that endpoint. That's why you need specialized tooling, specialized personnel providing specialized processes and services to be able to monitor those endpoints and those assets to detect and respond more quickly and be able to eradicate the attacker access before it becomes something like a full-scale ransomware outbreak.
And I would just add that those things are absolutely vital, but it is as critical that they're configured properly and that they're maintained properly. Otherwise, putting advanced cybersecurity products and services over the top of that isn't going to yield the results that we're hoping for.
Absolutely. How can you detect and respond if you don't even know what it is you're supposed to be looking at in the first place?
You bet.
Good stuff, guys. So that kind of leads to another question. We're talking about all of these advancements and including new types of security solutions, this detect and respond. What do businesses do? Does it make sense to retrain existing IT teams to handle cybersecurity, to become a cybersecurity team?
So
what does that look like? What should organizations be looking at?
So that's an excellent question. We certainly see a lot of people who have an IT background who are interested in a career change who want to join forces with the cybersecurity industry. My recommendation is always, if you are passionate and capable in the realm of IT, I'd certainly consider that you sort of double down or continue along that course. IT work is not going to go away. In fact, it's become more complicated over time with the adoption of cloud infrastructure. There's not a time in my own personal experience and background in IT where there was more complexity when you're dealing with virtualization and data straddling multiple cloud infrastructures and service providers, and the configuration and management of this stuff it's trickier than ever. So you need solid IT personnel to be able to manage all of that, to configure and to align with your business goals and support that and implement things properly. I've seen certainly a lot of IT folks out there who are oversubscribed and overutilized and expected to be able to tackle it all. Without the proper training and education, they can't do what they need to do. And by that same token, cybersecurity professionals need to focus entirely on the service that they're providing, on the capability that they offer to the business in terms of detection and response, and providing strategy and direction and insight into what does the risk environment look like and how does that affect the organization and what should the organization do in relation to that. Really, in a perfect world, IT and cyber go hand in hand in support of the business, helping not only sustain and deploy and migrate, but also protect and monitor and defend. And at times those two are even at odds with one another, but ultimately they both really need to exist in support of the business.
And although they're hand in hand, those are still completely separate roles. I'm always a champion of the triad of people, process, and technology, and the people, the process, and the technology differ greatly between those two roles. The more that's understood and the more that delineation is created, I think the more the organization gets as a result of those investments. And I think simply said, it's just very obvious that being one doesn't mean you're the other. Just because you're an IT person or a traditional IT technologist doesn't mean that you're a cybersecurity expert by any means.
I completely agree. I even go as far to say as you inundate individuals with too many tasks. It's a recipe for failure across all of them.
For sure.
All right. So I guess as we continue to progress through here, what does a good cybersecurity posture look like today then? An organization that has good posture, that has a good security program, what are they doing to be successful?
So people and process and technology was brought up several times. I think, lots of organizations have already begun the journey of adopting some form of regulation or cybersecurity framework. That is a great way to measure progress and track maturity in relation to some set of prescribed goals or controls for an organization to address cyber risk. I'd say it's equally important for organizations to adopt a framework like the NIST cybersecurity framework or implementation of CIS controls or something along those lines to really measure where they are and come up with ideas for what are next steps for improvement. I'd say it's equally important for an organization to consider things like conducting tabletop exercises, and especially having things like compliance gap analysis, a risk assessment, or a penetration test or risk audit performed to evaluate whether or not those controls are truly effective. The reality of the situation is, you can implement as many controls as you can find online or be advised to implement by consultants or advisors. The reality is attackers will almost always find a way in, and the best practice for any organization is to continuously evaluate in real world scenarios their controls against what attackers are capable of to identify the key gaps and prioritize addressing those.
When I think about cybersecurity posture, the one word that comes to my mind immediately is resiliency. if you're an organization that doesn't have a cyber response plan, if leaders within the organization don't know where that plan is and understand the basics of how that plan gets executed, that would worry me a lot. Jeff, I couldn't agree with you more that in organization aligning with a standard is really important for all of the reasons that you shared. Understanding what best practices actually are, everyone being able to kind of speak a similar language. We're definitely not the first industry to develop standards for the benefit of trying to get a consistent result. So I think those are tremendously important for an organization when they're trying to better their security posture.
Agreed. This is great stuff, guys. And one of the key takeaways from that, having a plan, having a response plan. Jeff, you said something really important. I'd like you to elaborate a little bit more on. You mentioned tabletop exercise. Can you explain at kind of a high level what you mean by that?
Sure. Different people will conduct a tabletop exercise in different ways, but typically it's something like a penetration tester or chief information security officer who is approaching an organization with an incident response plan, throwing out a hypothetical scenario and talking through an incident, a hypothetical incident with them. If this were to occur, how would you respond to that based on your incident response plan? What if you pulled this capability away from the situation? How would that alter or affect your ability to respond and recover from that incident? And talking through that, especially with key decision makers, anybody who can affect change or should be involved in an incident for that organization, could be really enlightening for that organization to identify the need to improve that incident response plan and really think through and address what happens when the boom occurs.
All of those items are probably something that make some of our guests here today question, where in the heck would I start if I want to better understand the cybersecurity posture of my organization, if I want to take some actionable next steps. If a business is at the beginning of that journey, Ray, can share with us, where would you point them? Where would you say they should start?
Sure. It all starts with a conversation. Every business is unique, and it starts with a conversation, really understanding what the business's goals are. Conversations of, I had mentioned different things that companies want to protect earlier: uptime, intellectual property, client data, but really understanding what's important to them, having conversations about what that looks like and what the roadmap might look like for the organization. And then through those conversations, if working with Impact, we kind of take two different approaches. There is either a business transformation assessment that we perform for the organization or something, or a risk audit. Either one of those can help us determine what the overall security posture of the organization is. That helps us develop a starting point, understand where we are, where we want to go, and then the assessment helps us build the roadmap on how to get to where we want to go. Because security is cliche as it might sound, security is a journey. It's not, hey, we bought this software, we implemented this new antivirus, we put in this new solution, and now we're secure. That's so far from it. Those solutions are important. The people are important. The technology, as we continue to talk about, but developing a security culture within an organization, developing that belief and buy-in from the executive level down is the most important thing. And that is absolutely a journey. It's changing people's mindsets. It's changing how we conduct daily activities, all with a security mindset. But it really all starts with that conversation and an evaluation of where we are.
Yeah, and Ray and Jeff, I know we've all been in this industry for a long time. Think about the people, the process, and technologies that we use to try to get similar results 5 years ago, 10 years ago. To your point, Ray, it's a journey. You're probably never going to get the feeling like you've actually got past the finish line, because there's just so much effort that needs to go in keeping up with things that are constantly changing around us.
Good.
So Stephanie, with that, I think we'll leave it open to any questions that our audience might have.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Let's see what questions we have from the audience. And if you still have a pending question, go ahead and drop it in the Ask Questions section. But the first question is actually one that I have for you, Jeff. And I know that, Dot Security kind of spun off of Impact as a, whole separate cybersecurity company. And you guys talk a lot about people, process, and technology. So I'm curious, like, just because you've done it, like, what does it all take to vet like those pieces of technology and get the right people and find those right processes to put in place?
So there's some effort behind it. I think the evaluation period for us was approximately a year of just fully focused research and development. I was afforded the opportunity to bring some team members together to help develop that process out, to build a standardized process and approach for, this is how we're going to deliver the service. This is the technology that we're going to use. So really, it did start with people, process, and technology. I think we evaluated over 1,000 different pieces of technology, and we looked at products and we considered things like, what does partnership entail? Can we leverage this at scale as an MSSP? Does this actually solve the problems that it's sold to address? And we really looked at it from the perspective of, we know what an effective IT program looks like. That's what we're emerging from. At Impact, we originated to begin with out of that managed IT division. So we didn't want to reinvent that wheel. We didn't want to step on toes or provide services that overlapped with what already existed. We knew that we needed to develop a new capability and offer solutions to problems that became very, very obvious over time. I mean, in the IT space, you see a ransomware incident, you're involved with the remediation of that, and you see how devastating that is to an organization. In the IT space, if you're afforded the opportunity to go evaluate an environment, perform a BTA or a systems assessment, and you look at the infrastructure and you look at the fact that oftentimes it's very poorly maintained and no one's paying any attention, and there could be attackers dwelling all throughout the environment, and there is no technology and there's no people monitoring this on a continuous basis. It's scary out there, especially when you look at environments like hospitals or police stations, and that's the status within that environment. So we knew we needed to build out this capability. We needed to provide that ongoing monitoring capability to businesses to sit on top of that IT infrastructure that should be properly maintained and migrated and managed effectively from an IT standpoint. And we knew that if we could provide effective detection response services on top of that, we would be really providing a profound service that organizations desperately needed. So it took a lot of time and effort to develop out that original stack. We've already evolved that, just because, any solution that you come up with, attackers are wily. It's cat and mouse. They're always going to find ways to circumvent protection and evade detection, to move past defenses. So our red team is a testament to that. When we perform penetration tests, that's all they do all day. They evade detection. They bypass our own tool sets, and we have to redesign our process and educate our analysts on the ability to detect, in spite of the fact that no singular tool and oftentimes no combination of tools can properly detect attacker behavior on their own. So in building that out, it really did go back to the trifecta. The technology is key, because that's the tooling that we depend on in order to provide the insight into assets and environments and the attacks. But really, it's the people that are watching those things and the processes that they follow and continuously develop that help us provide the service that is the cybersecurity offering at DOT.
Awesome. I appreciate that answer, Jeff. So throwing it over to some audience questions. The first one we have is, I'm sure this might be one you guys hear often, but what's the point of having advanced cybersecurity if you can still get breached?
So that's a good question. I'll field that one. So I would say, going back to the incident response plan and development, it's kind of, there's a lot of analogies out there, right? The internet is a scary place. It's this dark corridor in the middle of the night. That it's this alley that we all have to walk down. Unfortunately, it's just there's muggers everywhere. There's no way to avoid it unless you want to just completely disconnect from the internet. We're all in this together. Cybersecurity, in many ways, especially on the virtual chief information security and the virtual compliance management side, the whole goal is risk management and implementation of regulatory compliance to address risk on an ongoing basis, to basically train you up almost like a personal trainer, right? It's not going to prevent you from getting mugged necessarily, but it will train you on better methods to defend yourself. So if that does occur, you've got people watching your back and you've got some adequate moves to defend yourself in relation to that inevitable attack.
And I would argue that if you're a business leader and you had to choose, would you rather lose production of your product, your systems, whatever that is, for a period of 2 hours or 2 months? Being resilient to that attack happening within your organization is what allows you to get back up on your feet and producing revenue that allows you to not only provide your products and services out to the marketplace, but more importantly, make sure that you can afford payroll and keep the people within your organization. So that for me, it's really about the resiliency side.
It absolutely is, and I'll maybe oversimplify it. Cybersecurity does not prevent breaches. It does not prevent hackers from attempting to get in. The idea, and when we talk about tabletops and incident response and resiliency, the whole idea is the detection. To understand, to know when they are attempting to breach, when they have breached, when they've compromised the system, being able to react and recover from it quickly. That is what, for all intents and purposes, what managed cybersecurity is. Identify it, remediate it, eradicate the threat, and recover as quickly as possible. And that is the difference between the 2 months of downtime and the 2 hours of downtime.
Perfect. Our next question, what does a cyber team actually do during a penetration test?
They're all teed up for you, Jeff.
Yeah. So, we've got, operationally, we've got our red team and our blue team. So the blue team, those are the defenders. They're providing those SOC services where they're detecting and responding to incidents. The red team, they're the hackers. They're good hackers. They're on our side. But basically, when they perform what we call a risk audit, a penetration test of an environment, they don't collect any credentials up front. They coordinate to basically break into an organization like an attacker would. Their goal is to figure out the paths of least resistance, figure out where are the areas that an attacker targeting the organization would be most likely to find, purchase, and gain access to whatever the assets are. Sometimes, depending on the engagement, we're looking at networks. Other times we're looking at applications, potentially targeting users to gain access to mailboxes or other systems that way. Of course, data is usually a crown jewel or a primary target. They'll sort of emulate the attacker accessing that stuff and then point out or highlight, here's how we did it, and here's recommendations to address that. And that turns out as really effective means to identify and prioritize risk to address for a business. And that's something that you can basically track and make sure that you're addressing so that it's that much more difficult for an attacker to get in. And the harder it is for the attacker to get in, the more likely it is that the blue team can then detect and respond before they dwell and they implement something like a ransomware attack.
Got it. Thank you. It's very interesting. Okay, our next question is a pretty interesting question. So in your opinion, should every business hire a chief information security officer?
I'll jump in. I think that in a perfect world, that would be great, but we're all well aware that there is significant job shortage in this country outside of just our industry, but our industry happens to be one of the top of the list. I don't think organizations could leverage that convenience, even if they had the resources and the dollars to do that. in my opinion, I think partnering with an organization that has those skill sets and those expertise is where most organizations that fall within the SMB space are probably going to get the best bang for their buck. It not only allows that organization to get similar results at a lower cost, but would argue that you're probably getting a higher level individual that sees much more across multiple industries, across multiple threats and so forth, because of working with many organizations versus just a single one.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, it looks like our last question that we have at this point, this is pretty interesting. So you guys talked about the difference between IT security and advanced cybersecurity, but is there any regular cybersecurity space in between?
So I think, yeah, I'll jump in. I think, we're certainly using the term advanced cybersecurity, really to call out the difference. Really a major motivation for this webinar, I believe, was just to help people understand the difference between IT and the cybersecurity, or rather the security elements of that are somewhat inherent or expected or should be a part of just any IT that's performed for your organization, versus cybersecurity, which is, an entirely separate service provided by different people for different purposes. So, as far as advanced cybersecurity is concerned, I'd say any cybersecurity is advanced in terms of, the people that provide it need to know what they're doing and need to focus on it wholly. But I guess there is no middle ground per se. It's just very important to understand that IT security and cybersecurity, again, two aspects providing different capabilities to an organization in a very similar fashion to HR and legal, or the notion of a heart surgeon or a brain surgeon. When you need one, you want to make sure you're going to the correct one. They're looking at essentially the same fundamental systems, but with different areas of expertise and for different reasons, and you want to make sure you're going to the right one.
And I think we throw terms out like basic cybersecurity and advanced cybersecurity. And when I say those words, what I really mean is having good security practices within IT, and then having cybersecurity products, services, practices, and so forth. Or what I've also said is basic cybersecurity and advanced cybersecurity. Again, not really commonly used words in our industry that allow us to specifically delineate and define one over the other. Maybe we'll get there. This industry is definitely really young yet, and we're navigating those things as an entire industry. But in terms of basic or regular, I think that is just having good, sound security measures within the IT operations of an organization.
Yeah, I guess to kind of round it out, I don't believe there is any middle ground. I've come across a lot of organizations that try to create that middle ground. And what I often see is, Jeremiah had mentioned earlier, there are some compliancy requirements, insurance requirements. Cyber liability insurance is requiring certain components from a managed security program. And that middle ground that I see people attempting to achieve is just kind of checking a box. Implementing a SIM to say they have a SIM, or implementing endpoint detection and response to say they have it. Just putting solutions in place to say it's there, versus putting those solutions in place and actually having eyes on glass and having those analysts and engineers involved in monitoring the environment. But that middle ground is the reality of it. It's a waste of money. There are solutions in place that no one's watching and truly don't improve the security posture in any way.
I'll just wrap up. Ray, you just kind of made me think of something where, when you get to the point of providing cybersecurity services, yes, the triad of people, process, and technology is still there, but the dependency on the people and the processes becomes significantly higher in the detection and response side of having, or of aligning to best practices, in comparison to the IT side, where there's more of a dependency on having the right products and the right tools in place versus the people and the process. So although there's always going to be a dependency on people, process, and technology, the level of dependency on each one of those kind of differs depending upon if you're on that good IT security side or that cybersecurity side.
Great.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys answering all of our questions. I'm going to kick it over to you guys one last time. If you can just share with our audience one key takeaway from today's discussion.
I guess I'll start it off. One of the biggest key takeaways for me that IT security is basic and protective. You know, it's that foundation. We need to have a solid foundation within an organization, your firewalls, your antivirus, your network. That all has to be in place and is extremely important to an organization's ability to continue to improve their security posture by layering in these additional security services. And it makes it more complex and more proactive versus reactive.
I'll jump in and I'll share that. For me, I feel like I'm a broken record here when it comes to people, process, and technology, but I think it's vitally important to recognize that those three items are completely different when it comes to a cybersecurity team in comparison to an IT team. It's extremely important to realize that the tool sets, the processes, and the technologies that those teams use are different, and they shouldn't be looked at as being something that's one and the same.
And I'll wrap it up with every organization needs cybersecurity, and cybersecurity cannot function without effective IT capabilities.
Well said.
Perfect.
Beautiful.
Yeah, well, thank you guys again. I really appreciate you guys taking some time out of your day to share your expertise here with our audience. And thank you to our audience for joining us. For all of you, there will be a little survey that's going to pop up when you close out of this webinar, and we would love to hear from you about other topics you're looking to learn about, or just how you felt about today's webinar. But yeah, with that, we'll give you some time back. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you.